G'day guys, JB here with the off-season finally upon us and another 82-game season finally out of the way, with no COVID hiccups, with no bubble, a full 82 games. I think it's time that I release formally my 50 greatest NBA players of all time. Some of you will agree, some of you will disagree, some will be surprised by some rankings, some won't be so surprised by some rankings, but I think you'll enjoy it. So sit back, relax, if you can in fact relax listening to lists and the sounds of my voice, and get ready for my 50 greatest NBA players of all time. At number 20, George Mikan. Played 1948-49 to 1955-56. Five-time NBA champion, six-time All-NBA first-team selection, four-time All-Star selection, one-time All-Star MVP, three-time scoring champion, and two-time rebounding champion. There were no individual awards during Mikan's career. As we move on to the stats, it must be noted there are no defensive stats, no turnover stats, and no three-point shooting stats in Mikan's career. In the regular season, he played 439 games, averaging 34.4 minutes per game. He averaged 23.1 points per game, 13.4 rebounds per game, 2.8 assists per game, shot 40.4% from the field, and 78.2% from the free throw line. In the playoffs, he played 70 games, averaging 36.6 minutes per game. He averaged 24 points per game, 13.9 rebounds per game, 2.2 assists per game, 40.4% from the field, and 78.6% from the free throw line. In the NBA Finals, he played 31 games, averaging 23.9 points per game, 15.3 rebounds per game, 2.4 assists per game, shot 36.7% from the field, and 79.7% from the free throw line. If you are writing a greatest of all time of anything, the three key words are greatest and all time. There is a particular emphasis for me when it pertains to the all-time side of things. If you wish to discredit players or errors, don't title your list with all time. The NBA's first recognised season is 1946-47, meaning that any all-time list must account for anything dating back that far. This allows for modern greats of the game to be recognised alongside the founding fathers of the game we see today. It is for that reason that I have the first superstar of the NBA, the first truly great big man of NBA history, George Mikan, on my list. Mikan was so dominant in the game's founding years that he was recognised as the greatest player it had seen in the first half of the 20th century. At 6'10", with broad shoulders to match his massive frame, Mikan was as big as any power forward or centre to ever play, and error for error, he was as good as all of them. His ability on the offensive end saw multiple rule changes to the game, and his touch around the rim has seen millions around the world using both hands close to the basket thanks to the Mikan drill. Defensively, teams wouldn't challenge Big George in an era of set shots, underhanded jumpers, and a floor-based game that saw him intimidate through fear and ability. All of this led to the first three-peat in league history, 5 titles in 6 years, and a run as a leader that only the likes of Michael Jordan, Tim Duncan, and Bill Russell have experienced. Many individuals throughout history have experienced rule changes implemented in their time to make things easier or more difficult for them to play the game. For Mikan, a large majority of the rule changes that were made were not only intended to curtail his dominance, but have stood the test of time and now, over 70 years later, remain a staple of the game. Some may not realise it, but in his post-playing days, he also delivered a rule change that changed the way the game was played. Statistics often tell a tale of a player's greatness, but nothing speaks of it more than literal changes to how the game is played and officiated. The first of these rule changes came in college, but carried with him to the NBA, that being goaltending. Mikan would simply swat and deflect every shot that came towards him on the defensive end. While defence as we know it today is often built around feeding into the help defence or playing off-ball to attack from the weak side, Mikan's teams would utilise his ability to go after every shot in a blueprint that Bill Russell would later build upon. Mikan is credited as a hero of Russell's, and it is easy to understand his impact. The second major effect that Mikan had on the league was the original widening of the lane from 6 feet to 12 feet. Today's college game still utilises the 12-foot lane, and the NBA eventually expanded the lane to what it is today in 16 feet. But for a period of time, the keyway was as wide as the average height of an everyday citizen. It is easy to see why this was implemented. Mikan at 6'10" with a death touch around the rim, swallowing every available rebound and swatting every shot, had the clear advantage when he was always no more than 3 feet away from the basket. The final major rule change that was implemented due to his dominant style of play and the lowest scoring game in NBA history was the 24-second shot clock. With Mikan unable to be stopped when he was near or had possession of the ball, teams simply started sitting on the ball or freezing possession. This resulted in the final score of the Lakers versus Pistons finishing at 19-18 in November 1950, and the realisation, while this was a way to win, that the league would not survive on games like this. The shot clock was implemented in 1954-55, the first year following Mikan's first retirement, and is now a universal addition to the game. Off the court, Mikan's impact was just as profound. Mikan was the first commissioner of the ABA, and in turn implemented not only the multicoloured ball, but also the three-point line. Yes, George Mikan is responsible for the three-point line. He is also responsible for the Minnesota Timberwolves, with his work in the mid to late 1980s, getting professional basketball back to Minneapolis decades after the Lakers, as well as ABA franchises the Muskies and Pipers had departed. If that wasn't enough, his numbers speak for themselves. Mikan won 3 scoring titles and 2 rebounding titles in his career, and his play in all 5 Lakers titles of that era would have landed him MVP of each series, let alone the season. For those critical of his shooting percentages, he on average finished 4.1 percentage points above the league average. In 2021-22, that's equal to shooting 50.2%. Of every player to average 20 points a game in the season, only 4 players had a higher shooting percentage: DeMar DeRozan, Karl Anthony Towns, Nikola Jokic, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Mikan's offensive dominance can be best summarised by the fact he's the only other player besides Michael Jordan to score over half his team's points in an NBA Finals game and win. In Game 1 of the 1950 Finals, Mikan scored 37 of the Lakers' 68 points. Mikan is a founding father of the game we know today and as dominant as any player of their respective era. George Mikan is a member of the Basketball Hall of Fame and was selected to the NBA's 25th, 35th, 50th and 75th anniversary teams. His number 99 has been honoured by Los Angeles, but not retired, as his achievements came when in Minneapolis. At number 19, David Robinson. Played 1989-90 to 2002-3. Two-time NBA champion, one-time MVP, one-time Defensive Player of the Year, four-time All-NBA first-team selection, two-time All-NBA second-team selection, four-time All-NBA third-team selection, four-time All-Defensive first-team selection, four-time All-Defensive second-team selection, 10-time All-Star selection, one-time scoring champion, one-time rebounding champion, one-time blocks champion, Rookie of the Year, and All-Rookie first-team selection. Robinson finished top 10 in MVP voting 9 times, top 3 in MVP voting 5 times, was a runner-up MVP vote getter twice, and a one-time MVP winner. In the regular season, he played 987 games, averaging 34.7 minutes per game. He averaged 21.1 points per game, 10.6 rebounds per game, 2.5 assists per game, 1.4 steals per game, 3 blocks per game, and 2.4 turnovers per game. He shot 51.8% from the field, 25% from deep, and 73.6% from the free throw line. In the playoffs, he played 123 games, averaging 34.3 minutes per game. He averaged 18.1 points per game, 10.6 rebounds per game, 2.3 assists per game, 1.2 steals per game, 2.5 blocks per game, and 2.3 turnovers per game. He shot 47.9% from the field, 10% from deep, and 70.8% from the free throw line. In the NBA Finals, he played 11 games, averaging 31.5 minutes per game. He averaged 13.5 points per game, 9.4 rebounds per game, 1.5 assists per game, 1.1 steals per game, 2.4 blocks per game, and 1 turnover per game. He shot 49.5% from the field. He did not attempt a three-point shot in the NBA Finals, and he shot 69.2% from the free throw line. From his rookie season until a career-stifling injury became a blessing in disguise, David Robinson was on pace to sit on the Mount Rushmore of NBA centres. While it didn't eventuate, the Admiral still cemented himself as one of the best athletes and complete players that the league has ever seen. Had it not been for Bill Russell, Robinson would be regarded as the greatest left-hander of all time, and had it not been for Wilt Chamberlain, he would likely be regarded as the most athletic big man of all time. And that's just from a historical standpoint. Amongst his peers, he is second only to Michael Jordan for a complete career resume, and second only to Hakeem Olajuwon as the best centre of the 1990s. Drafted first overall in the 1987 draft, Robinson would complete 2 years of naval service before barnstorming the league as its most athletic big man. Before his time, he can be compared as a poor man's Wilt Chamberlain, and for those after him, it was like looking at a 7-foot-tall LeBron James. Robinson could do anything thanks to his physical gifts. Scoring was never an issue. His ability to stretch the baseline for a mid-range left-hander was probably his weakest skill, while he ran the floor like a gazelle and attacked the rim either face-up or with his back to the basket with equal ability. His rebounding was as natural as any other part of his game. His facilitation saw the Spurs thrive to a level that hadn't been seen since George Gervin, and defensively, he is one of the most complete players ever. Winning Rookie of the Year in 1990, Robinson compiled a career that, despite no championship success as the team leader, saw him as one of the 3 most rounded players of his era. From his rookie season to the end of the 1995-96 season, Robinson would average 25.6 points, 11.8 rebounds, 3.1 assists, 1.7 steals, yes, as a centre, and 3.6 blocks a game on 52.6% shooting. It is a shame that he played in such a stacked era of talent and big men, as the gaudy numbers and level of production would have seen him as the best player of his era at almost any other time in history. Such production saw the building of playoff success for the Spurs. Delivering them franchise record 56 wins as a rookie, Robinson pushed the Spurs past the first round for the first time since 1982-83, sweeping the Denver Nuggets before losing to eventual Western Conference champions, the Portland Trail Blazers. With another stellar year under his belt in 1990-91, Robinson was recognised as a member of the All-NBA and All-Defensive First Teams. Since the inception of the All-Defensive Teams in 1968-69, no player had earned both honours in the same season in such little time. Only one other player since has managed to do this in their second season, a player that Robinson would become very familiar with. After a first-round exit in 1990-91, Spurs would push into the playoffs in 1991-92 off the back of Robinson's Defensive Player of the Year efforts. Managing just 68 games before injury saw his season over, Robinson led the league with 4.5 blocks and 2.3 steals a game. It was the second and final season in league history of a player averaging at least 2 steals and 4 blocks a game, behind Hakeem Olajuwon's 2.1 steals and 4.6 blocks in 1989-90. The battle between Robinson and Olajuwon in the Western Conference was slowly building to its boiling point as the years went on. This would be decided in 1995. Building to that, Robinson continued to write a resume with as much personal success as anyone to play the game. A gold medal on the Dream Team at the 1992 Olympics elevated his standing in the game, and by now Robinson was clearly one of the 5 best players in the world. Another solid season in 1993 saw the Spurs again reach the second round before being eliminated by eventual conference champions, the Phoenix Suns, before Robinson collected the 1993-94 scoring title. This was capped off by a 71-point effort in his final game to snatch the title away from Shaquille O'Neal. Robinson was on a mission in 1994-95, producing his best season to date and delivering the best record in franchise history for the Spurs. Robinson would be named MVP. This would sit Robinson alongside Michael Jordan on the list of players who, to this day, won a scoring title, Defensive Player of the Year, and League MVP. All Robinson needed was a championship to cap things off. But as I mentioned before, his arch rival and the man he finished second in MVP voting to the year prior, Hakeem Olajuwon, awaited him in the conference finals. Ultimately deciding the fate of each player, Olajuwon delivered his greatest ever playoff performance, while Robinson could only watch as the former MVP helped drag his 6th seed Rockets to the series win and a repeat championship. Robinson would again have the Spurs contending in 1995-96 as he finished runner-up MVP to Michael Jordan, but with injury changing the whole pathway of his career and the fortunes of the franchise, it was time for Tim Duncan to take centre stage. Drafted in 1997, Duncan immediately assumed the role of number 1 option and leader, with his addition to the Spurs helping guide them in a direction of success that hadn't been seen before or replicated since. Delivering 2 titles in 1999 and 2003, Duncan would learn through Robinson, who would play a key supporting role. Stepping up when Duncan was injured was the extent of Robinson's career moving forward until his retirement in 2003, but that shouldn't undersell the elite talent he was in his prime. David Robinson is a member of the Basketball Hall of Fame, was selected to both the NBA's 50th and 75th anniversary teams, and his number 50 is retired by San Antonio. At number 18, Charles Barkley. Played 1984-85 to 1999-2000. Barkley is a one-time MVP, five-time All-NBA first-team selection, five-time All-NBA second-team selection, one-time All-NBA third-team selection, 11-time All-Star selection, one-time All-Star MVP, one-time rebounding champion, and All-Rookie first-team selection. Charles finished top 10 in MVP voting 9 times, top 5 in MVP voting 4 times, was a one-time runner-up MVP, and of course a one-time MVP winner. In the regular season, he played 1,073 games, averaging 36.7 minutes per game. He averaged 22.1 points per game, 11.7 rebounds per game, 3.9 assists per game, 1.5 steals per game, 0.8 blocks per game, and 3.1 turnovers per game. He shot 54.1% from the field, 26.6% from deep, and 73.5% from the free throw line. In the playoffs, he played 123 games, averaging 39.4 minutes per game. He averaged 23 points per game, 12.9 rebounds per game, 3.9 assists per game, 1.6 steals per game, and 0.9 blocks per game on 2.9 turnovers per game. He shot 51.3% from the field, 25.5% from 3, and 71.7% from the free throw line. In the NBA Finals, he played 6 games, averaging 46.2 minutes per game. He averaged 27.3 points per game, 13 rebounds per game, 5.5 assists per game, 1.2 steals per game, 0.5 blocks per game, and 1.7 turnovers per game. He shot 47.6% from the field, 25% from deep, and 75% from the free throw line. It is amazing what a player's reputation post-career can become. For some, the hype surrounding them far exceeds their ability. This is best exemplified by Steve Kerr. For others, they are relegated to the history books as another face in the crowd that made up their era. This is no more evident than Charles Barkley. A perennial all-star for his career and an MVP candidate for a decade, Barkley has been relegated to being just an old head analyst on TNT. But make no mistake, Barkley was a force to be reckoned with. Inch for inch, Barkley may be the greatest power forward of all time, using his solid 6'4" frame and developed guard skills to play all over the floor as well as anyone to have laced them up. Drafted 5th overall in the 1984 NBA draft, Barkley's impact was immediate for the Philadelphia 76ers alongside Moses Malone and Julius Erving. With Philadelphia back in the Eastern Conference Finals, it appeared the transition from Moses and Doc to Barkley would be seamless. With both men stepping back and teaching Barkley how to conduct himself in the league, it appeared to be a matter of time until the round mound of Rebound assumed control of the franchise and delivered success. How could fans not be excited by this? A modern comparison is Zion Williamson, but Barkley's fitness and consistency is so far above that of Zion's that it almost feels insulting to compare them. An ability to attack the rim at speed with his size while running the floor like a guard, it is clear to see why Barkley could score with guards smaller than him and rebound with forwards and centres bigger than him. Barkley's first double-digit rebound season came in 1985-86, something he did for the remainder of his career. His 15 consecutive seasons averaging double-digit rebounds still remains an NBA record. His league-leading 14.6 rebounds per game in 1986-87 make him the shortest player to ever lead the league, and he is the shortest player to ever record 10,000 career rebounds. Add to this his 20 points a game, and he had 11 straight seasons of 20 points and 10 rebounds a game, tied for 5th all-time along with Moses Malone, Elgin Baylor and Bob Pettit. And it wasn't just a compliment to his rebounding. Barkley's field goal percentage never dipped below 47%, even in his later years. His career field goal percentage of 54.1% sits him 3rd of all players to ever score 20,000 points, and he sits 3rd all-time for seasons of at least 20 points a game, shooting 55%, with 7 behind Kareem and Shaq. An all-star by his 3rd season, this would be the handing over of the reins by Dr. J before retiring at season's end. Barkley was now established as one of the brightest stars in the league, but would now have to shoulder the load and the trials and tribulations that came with being the team leader. That would come in his first solo season, as the 76ers missed the playoffs for the first time since 1975-76, despite what was arguably Barkley's best year of his career and first of 5 All-NBA first-team selections. Like many young stars who looked to shoulder the load to get things done, Barkley realised he had to make the most of his teammates to succeed, and subsequently saw a drop in numbers, but a jump in wins to make the playoffs. Following season saw more growth from the team, who gained their only 50-win season under Barkley, and saw Charles finish runner-up MVP to Magic Johnson. Barkley and Philadelphia entered the decade looking to mix it up with Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, but following back-to-back 4-1 defeats in 1990 and 1991, it was clear something had to change. With a sub-500 season in 1991-92, Barkley requested a trade. Initially heading to the Los Angeles Lakers, Charles would find himself in Phoenix following his gold medal with the Dream Team at the 1992 Olympics. With prime key pieces around him and an urgency to be the best player on the planet, Barkley delivered an MVP season. Setting the franchise record at the time for wins, a record that was broken in 2021-22, Charles would deliver the best playoff run of his career to lead the Suns to the NBA Finals. The only issue he had? He ran into the best player in the league. Facing Jordan and the Bulls, Barkley and the Suns competed for 6 games, but Jordan's NBA Finals record of 41 points per game was too much to overcome as the Bulls three-peated. This would be the first of 3 straight seasons for Barkley bowing out at the hands of the best player in the league, as Hakeem Olajuwon in Houston eliminated Barkley in Phoenix in both 1994 and 95, including a rally from 3-1 down. Charles remained a Sun for one more season, before a 3-1 defeat against David Robinson and San Antonio saw Barkley traded to Houston. Barkley's final All-Star season came in his first as a Rocket, helping Houston back to the Western Conference Finals despite playing only 53 games. A John Stockton jumper right over Charles in Game 6 to win the series would be the closest Barkley and the Rockets would get to returning to the finals. Barkley's second and third season would be the last 2 healthy years for Charles, with both ending in first-round playoff defeats. Charles suffered what would become a career-ending injury just 20 games into the 1999-2000 season, rupturing a quadricep tendon. Determined, Barkley returned for one final game in April, finishing his career with an offensive rebound and a putback basket. Charles walked off the floor for the final time that night, ending a rollercoaster career. Charles Barkley is a member of the Basketball Hall of Fame, was selected to both the NBA's 50th and 75th anniversary teams, and his number 34 is retired by Philadelphia and Phoenix. At number 17, Karl Malone, played 1985-86 to 2003-4. 2-time MVP winner, 11-time All-NBA first-team selection, 2-time All-NBA second-team selection, 1-time All-NBA third-team selection, 3-time All-Defensive first-team selection, 1-time All-Defensive second-team selection, 14-time All-Star selection, 2-time All-Star MVP, and All-Rookie first-team selection. Malone finished top 10 in MVP voting 14 times, top 5 in MVP voting 9 times, top 3 in MVP voting 5 times, was a 1-time runner-up in MVP, and a 2-time MVP winner. In the regular season, he played 1,476 games, averaging 37.2 minutes per game. He averaged 25 points per game, 10.1 rebounds per game, 3.6 assists per game, 1.4 steals per game, 0.8 blocks per game, and 3.1 turnovers per game. He shot 51.6% from the field, 27.4% from deep, and 74.2% from the free throw line. In the playoffs, he played 193 games, averaging 41 minutes per game. He averaged 24.7 points per game, 10.7 rebounds per game, 3.2 assists per game, 1.3 steals per game, 0.7 blocks per game, and 2.8 turnovers per game. He shot 46.3% from the field, 16.2% from deep, 73.6% from the free throw line. In the NBA Finals, he played 16 games, averaging 38.3 minutes per game. He averaged 19.6 points per game, 9.6 rebounds per game, 3.3 assists per game, 1.1 steals per game, 0.6 blocks per game, and 2.6 turnovers per game. He shot 46% from the field. He did not make a three-pointer in the NBA Finals and shot 67.6% from the free throw line. Another player who, had it not been for Michael Jordan, would sit likely in the top 10 of this list. In his own right, Karl Malone forged a career that still sits him on the Mount Rushmore of power forwards. Malone had 2 of the 3 required qualities to make a case as the greatest of all time: consistent high-level production and elite-level durability. Malone's 17 straight seasons of 20 points per game see him tied for the second longest streak in NBA history, and his career total of 36,928 points sit him third all-time. The only 2 players in the same ballpark for such feats of longevity are Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and LeBron James. To complement this, Malone sits tied second all-time alongside Kobe Bryant for the most All-NBA first-team selections with 11, trailing only LeBron James. This was possible thanks to a level of durability in a superstar that has never been surpassed. In all 17 full seasons when playing for the Jazz, Malone played 80 games in each of them, 81 games 15 times, and all 82 games 10 times. Even in the lockout season of 1999, Malone managed 49 of a possible 50 games. The glaring omission from the three required qualities to make a case as the greatest of all time for Karl is success. But as I outlined at the beginning, a big part of this was due to the era he played in. Malone captured 2 MVP awards during his career and finished runner-up in 1997-98 to Jordan. Without MJ, this is a three-peat of awards, something that only Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain and Larry Bird have achieved. Despite sitting third all-time in career points and a career average of 25 points a game, Malone never won a scoring title. He did, however, finish second to Jordan 5 times, including 4 consecutively between 1988-89 and 1991-92. Add in the 2 straight finals defeats at the hands of MJ, and you have arguably the biggest second-place getter of his generation. While hypotheticals and what-ifs are what make sports fans salivate, the ranking of Karl Malone with 2 league MVP awards against Karl Malone if he was a back-to-back champion, back-to-back finals MVP, 3-peat league MVP, and 5-time scoring champion is a night and day difference. Malone was drafted to the Jazz with the 13th pick in 1985. The draft most famous for producing Patrick Ewing to the Knicks. Malone entered the Jazz the year after John Stockton and played a key second scoring role behind Adrian Dantley. By his sophomore season, Malone was the team's number 1 option. Karl would post the first of his 9 consecutive and 10 in 12 seasons, averaging at least 20 points and 10 rebounds, and cement himself down the lane and on the low block as the pillar of the Jazz offense for the next 17 seasons. The following season saw John Stockton move to the starting point guard position, and in combination with Malone, would deliver the best pick-and-roll duo in league history. The Jazz showed their ability with Stockton and Malone leading the way, pushing the eventual NBA champion Los Angeles Lakers to 7 games. As mentioned previously when discussing John Stockton, it is impossible to think of what each player would have been without the other. Playing 1,412 games together, Stockton and Malone proved to be the most offensively productive duo of all time and saw Utah through its most successful period in league history. With Jerry Sloan taking over the coaching reins of the team 17 games into the 1988-89 season, Malone, along with Stockton, would see the Jazz deliver the first of 11 50-win seasons over the next 13 years. The only 2 times Utah would not hit the mark were in 1992-93 with 47 wins and 1999 when the league played 50 games and they managed 37 wins. Had 1999 been a normal 82-game season, the Jazz were winning at a pace of 60 wins. The only issue with all the personal success and great regular season performances for the Jazz and Malone was a lack of success in the postseason as a leader. From 1986-87 to the end of his time in Utah, 10 of the team's 14 playoff runs ended either prematurely or in a whimper that could be pinpointed to Malone and his shortcomings. 1987 and 2001 saw the Jazz blow a 2-0 lead in the first round to lose in 5 games. 1989 saw the Jazz as a second seed swept 3-0 in the first round. Poor shooting from Karl in 1990, 1993, 1996, 1999 and 2002 proved costly in close games and series. Lost in the first round as a 60-win team to the 6th seed Rockets in 1995. And the famous "the mailman doesn't deliver on Sundays" line set the tone for the 1997 NBA Finals as league MVP. Make no mistake, Karl was a production machine and the Jazz made 2 trips to the NBA Finals, but the ability to take it to the next level to deliver was the difference maker. After no championship success by the end of the 2002-03 season, and with John Stockton retiring, Malone as a free agent would sign with the Los Angeles Lakers alongside Gary Payton in a bid for one more chance at a ring. This would be the beginning of the end for Karl. Age would finally begin to catch up with the mailman as he managed just 42 regular season games. Malone would be rested and ready for the playoffs, but with his role reduced and injury becoming a factor, his efforts and production dipped. His body finally gave out at the end of the finals when Malone failed to dress for Game 5. This would be the end of Karl's career. Karl Malone is a member of the Basketball Hall of Fame, was selected to both the NBA's 50th and 75th anniversary teams, and his number 32 is retired by Utah. At number 16, Oscar Robertson. Played 1960-61 to 1973-74. A one-time NBA champion, a one-time league MVP, 9-time All-NBA first-team selection, 2-time All-NBA second-team selection, 12-time All-Star selection, 3-time All-Star MVP, 6-time assist champion, and Rookie of the Year. Oscar Robertson finished top 5 in MVP voting 9 times, top 3 in MVP voting 5 times, was a 1-time runner-up MVP, and of course a 1-time MVP winner. Now, before I go on with Oscar's stats, it must be known that there are limited to no defensive numbers available, there were no turnover numbers available, and there was no three-point line during his career. In the regular season, he played 1,040 games, averaging 42.2 minutes per game. He averaged 25.7 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game, 9.5 assists per game, 1.1 steals per game, and 0.1 blocks per game. He shot 48.5% from the field and 83.8% from the free throw line. In the playoffs, he played 86 games, averaging 42.7 minutes per game. He averaged 22.2 points per game, 6.7 rebounds per game, 8.9 assists per game, 0.9 steals per game, and 0.3 blocks per game. He shot 46% from the field and 85.5% from the free throw line. In the NBA Finals, he played 11 games, averaging 45.5 minutes per game. He averaged 16.3 points per game, 4.2 rebounds per game, 8.7 assists per game, 0.3 steals per game. He shot 43.2% from the field and 78.9% from the free throw line. If Oscar Robertson's entire career was on film, the knowledge of him beyond triple-doubles and a championship alongside Kareem Abdul-Jabbar would be greater. His prime saw him as a walking triple-double. The ability to score 30 points from anywhere on the floor as efficiently as any guard in history, the ability to gather double-digit rebounds against big men who consistently gathered 20 rebounds a game, and facilitate to his teammates better than anyone not named Magic Johnson. Until Michael Jordan, and then later Russell Westbrook, there was no guard in league history that could stuff the stat sheet better on a nightly basis. And while doing all of this in an era of giants, Robertson proved to be arguably its toughest matchup, but is a face that is forgotten due to his slithering appearances in the story of 1960s pro basketball. Oscar Robertson has been touted as the best post-playing guard to play the game before Michael Jordan, and some argue that even after Jordan's career and later Kobe Bryant, that Robertson's ability on the block still stands up. It is hard to argue with limited footage of Oscar available, clearly displaying his ability to utilise his size to his advantage. Oscar at 6'5" was taller than the average guard of his era, to the point where small forwards Elgin Baylor and John Havlicek stood eye to eye with him. This gave Oscar a vision advantage over smaller defenders to throw accurate passes or utilise the space he created with his size. And while playing with the likes of Wayne Embry, Bob Boozer and Jerry Lucas, he was able to pull down rebounds better than any guard in history. He was a revolutionary player, a blueprint for Michael Jordan, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, and a player whose combination of scoring and passing has only been seen in LeBron James. As a guard, only Michael Jordan has more 30-point-per-game seasons, and only Jason Kidd has more rebounds. Only Magic Johnson and LeBron James have more assists at 6'5" or taller, and only LeBron James has passed him in both career points and assists. From the inception of the NBA's MVP award in 1955-56 to Magic Johnson's first MVP win in 1986-87, Oscar Robertson and Bob Cousy were the only guards in history to win the award. He sits tied for the second most All-NBA first-team selections by a point guard with Magic Johnson behind Bob Cousy. His 3 All-Star Game MVP awards sit him tied third all-time with Michael Jordan, LeBron James and Shaquille O'Neal, trailing Kobe Bryant and Bob Pettit. His 6 assist titles sit him third all-time behind John Stockton and Bob Cousy, and he has 5 of the 6 30-point, 10-assist per game seasons in history. The only other season belongs to Tiny Archibald. Robertson was drafted by Cincinnati as the first pick of the 1960 NBA draft. Robertson immediately revolutionised the way the point guard position and the role of a guard was played. Oscar is one of 3 rookies ever to average 30 points a game, as well as 30 points and 10 rebounds a game, the only rookie guard to average 10 rebounds a game, and the second highest assist total and assist per game average for a rookie. This was the start of a 5-year run that no guard in league history has matched as far as stuffing the stat sheet. The Big O produced the first triple-double season ever in 1961-62, averaging 30.8 points, 12.5 rebounds, and 11.4 assists per game. This level of production has not been matched since. Russell Westbrook has delivered the other 4 triple-double seasons in league history, but none measure up in comparison. While Westbrook was crowned MVP for his efforts in 2016-17, Robertson would finish third behind Bill Russell as he led the Celtics to the first ever 60-win season in history and Wilt Chamberlain's 50.4 points per game. However, the Big O lifted the record of Cincinnati by 10 games, saw them into the playoffs, and their best record in 8 years. If you average out the first 5 years of Robertson's career, he averaged a triple-double, a run that has only been matched by Russell Westbrook from 2016-17 to 2020-21. All of these numbers and achievements proved to be in vain for Robertson. Leading Cincinnati to the playoffs for 6 straight seasons, the Big O will continue to produce big numbers, but would hinder both his teammates and team success. History tells us that a player must reduce their own personal numbers for success, but Robertson thought he had a formula that worked. 3 of these playoff eliminations came at the hands of those Celtics teams, and the other thanks to the 1966-67 Philadelphia 76ers. With no success coming Oscar's way by the end of the 1969-70 season, and coach Bob Cousy coming out of retirement in what many deemed a publicity stunt, Robertson was done in Cincinnati. In a breath of fresh air, Robertson found himself in Milwaukee playing next to the 1969-70 Rookie of the Year, Lou Alcindor. Alongside the soon-to-be named league MVP, Robertson was able to step back as a primary option but continue to contribute at a high level. This role paid off immediately, with Milwaukee winning its first ever NBA championship in 1970-71. While the Bucks were a good team without Robertson, winning 56 games and making the divisional finals in 1969-70, it was the veteran experience of Robertson along with the MVP play of Alcindor that saw them win 66 games and a championship. The Bucks will continue to contend for the remainder of Oscar's career, with the Big O playing through to the end of the 1974 NBA Finals as Milwaukee lost to Boston in 7 games. Oscar Robertson is a member of the Basketball Hall of Fame, was selected to the NBA's 35th, 50th and 75th anniversary teams. His number 14 is retired by Sacramento and his number 1 is retired by Milwaukee.